Cancer takes a toll. It affects us physically, mentally, and emotionally, relationally and spiritually. And the conversations we had this morning and throughout this day that have given you information about cutting-edge science and the options available to you to treat the disease of cancer are important. And the conversation we're going to have right now about the options that are available to you to care for yourself and to care for your relationships and your spirit are important too. Because when we think about treating the whole person, it's the way we wrap together all of those things that impact your quality of life, right? So I am just going to let you in a little bit on my process when I'm asked to speak and I sit down to write. Usually I do that at the end of the day when everybody else in my house is asleep, right? So it's dark, it's quiet, and it's a little messy, like a little Jackson Pollock. I've got papers and I write and I just kind of free associate and I just kind of get there, put things that inspire me in front of me, and I just go, and I literally wrote this down. Psychological distress protection plan. What? That isn't quite right. First of all, it sounds like I'm being sponsored by Geico. Second of all, it makes me think that at any given moment, the Aflac duck might walk up here, or that I'm somehow implying that we're going to rip open our shirt and there's a superhero in you that will save the day. And nope, that's not it. Because all of those things imply that you're fragile and that you're weak and that you're in need of being rescued. So I took a lap around my kitchen, I took a deep breath, I stared out my window, and you know what I really want to convey is that the essence of you is so valuable that we have got to give some time and attention to making sure you are ready and you are thoughtful about the way you walk through this life on the cancer trajectory every day. So we're going to talk about stress. And we're going to talk about what it is that uniquely triggers your stress and how stress shows up in your body. And I also wanted to give you 3 life-changing coping behaviors or things to think about. Life-changing, i.e. life work. And then we're going to end this by talking about your resilience, because there is resilience in all of you. So stress. Stress is your body's way of responding to a demand. That's it. There's a physical response, there's a mental response, and there's an emotional response to stress. And there, come to find out, there are many different kinds of stress. There's acute stress and chronic stress and eustress and distress. And not all of that stress is bad. And stress is subjective. So what totally stresses me out may not even faze you, and vice versa. And if we think about our relationships for a moment, that might be a crux of the matter there. You know, I don't know why this is bothering you so much, or why don't you understand how important this is, right? So if you think about your life, if you have gone to college, if you have taken a test, if you have started or ended a relationship, if you have completed an endurance race, then you know stress, right? All of those things require stress, and that kind of stress drives us. It pushes us forward, it makes us perform, it gets us where we want to go. We need that stress. In fact, in our life, we require stress in order to keep moving forward. Distress is a different form of stress. And I'm just going to take a quick second and say that distress isn't reserved for people who are clinically depressed, or clinically anxious, or having an abnormal grief reaction. Stress affects each and every one of us. And I can definitively tell you times when I have felt distress. And I'll tell you that moment looks like, I am not going to be able to do this. I've hit my limit. That's about it. That's about all I can do, right? Because when we are feeling distress, we perceive that we can't do it, that we can't cope. And that kind of distress depletes us of energy, and it makes us feel incapable. It's very different than that other stress, right? That other stress made us strive, and distress pulls us back. So I put this slide up here because stress is not a solitary thing. It doesn't exist in a silo. And I'm going to tell you this, see if I can illustrate this when I think about my practice and the people that I work with. I can have a client come in, let's say my Wednesday at 3 o'clock. And she comes in and we're talking and we're discussing fear. We're discussing how there's uncertainty and confusion about the next step and who she is and what's changed, conflict and tension within relationships. And within that entire session, I'll tell you, she's articulate in the way she explains how she's feeling. There's insight and self-awareness. It's not making it easier, but that's where we are in that session, okay? 1 week later, comes in next Wednesday. Just 7 days have passed. 7 days, 1 week later, she comes in and I'm filled with big emotions. Can't even find the words to tell me how she's feeling or what's going on. We don't even know where to begin because it's hard to even know where we are. You know, she's really, it's a totally different state. And when we sit through that hour and I begin to really tune in and listen, you know what? She hasn't been sleeping well this week. And it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and she hasn't had a hot second to have lunch. And before she left for work, she and her husband kind of had a tense moment. It left that gray kind of cloud over you all day. And then when she got to work, there were so many demands and an unrelenting pace, and that schedule was pushing and pushing and pushing at her. And when she got to me by 3, So the reason why I say this is that we can meet our day in a stress-vulnerable way and in a stress-resilient way, and that some of the things that affect that, we've got control over. You know, folks, sometimes the best thing you can do with a crappy day is go to bed. Just go to bed. I said this yesterday when I was talking, that if you're seeing the cup as half empty or you're seeing the cup as half full, then you're missing the point. The cup is refillable, and that we get a chance to do this again and again every day. So if you're meeting a day and you're feeling that distress, maybe we need to go to bed and sleep. Have you eaten? Have you been alone all weekend? And maybe we need to call in our people and get together with others. Some of those things can affect us. Triggers. Triggers are those things that we find through the day that leave us feeling out of sorts, not quite ourselves. They might put up the proverbial like dukes, make us feel defensive, or quite the opposite, just like rip us bare and make us feel vulnerable and open, right? Those are the triggers. Triggers can be certain people. Triggers can be topics. Triggers can be those cliched things that people say when they talk about cancer or their opinion about your choices. Triggers can be a date on the calendar. I'm not suggesting when I talk about caring for yourself, about triggers, that we figure those things out, bottle them up, put them on the back shelf. Because those things, as you begin to figure out what those triggers are, might be really important things to take to your therapist or your support group or a trusted group of people that care for you. Why does this person always make me feel this way? Or whenever this topic comes up, I get really unnerved. Why is that happening? Look at that, dig deeper. But also, as you begin to figure out your triggers, there's wisdom in knowing how you maneuver through those landmines in your day so that you don't get swept off your feet in an unexpected way in the middle of work or in the middle of a social gathering, so that you can construct scripts and things you can say to back out of something or move somewhere else. Similarly, I want you to become increasingly self-aware. I'm going to challenge you to figure out how stress shows up for you. So I think in our world, we are so accustomed to living with stress that it's just become this familiar undercurrent or buzz in our life, or maybe this dark cloud that kind of lingers always, until we have the breakdown moment that I think about. Does stress show up for you in your thinking? Do you notice that suddenly your head is working overtime and you're taking that train of terribles way over here? Do you feel suddenly really sensitive and irritable and annoyed? Does it show up emotionally for you? Or are you somebody where you feel it in your shoulders, or you get a headache, feel a knot in your stomach? Let's begin to pay attention. Can I challenge that? Can I give you that homework? Pay attention and figure that out so that when you begin to feel the rumble of that stress, that we don't minimize it and say, okay, I'm still good though. I can still do today. That's when you take care of yourself. Not over here when you've pushed through it so long that we're at our breaking point, but when you first feel the beginning of that stress ticking for you. I told you I was going to give you 3 life-changing coping behaviors. Here they are, and they're going to sound so simple when I identify them in 3 individual slides. But friends, these things are hard, and it's life work, and we're all doing them. The first one is self-compassion. We can be so much kinder and more supportive and reassuring and comforting to others than we often are to ourselves. You deserve your own acceptance and forgiveness and patience and love. And we talked earlier today about this cancer experience has changed you, and it might take some time to re-get to know you and to learn to love that. But how do you show yourself some kindness? So the next time that distress moment shows up, I just want you to notice it. You know, it's been a long road. This has been hard for me. Just notice it. Be gentle. Show yourself some kindness and remind yourself that to feel that way just means you're human. I love this quote. What are the most powerful words in the universe? The ones you use to talk to yourself. Caring for yourself, coping number 2, acceptance. Acceptance means letting go of the fight. That when we're struggling, sometimes we're not only struggling with something, but we're struggling with the fact that we're struggling, right? So then we're building on top of it, we're compounding it. Let go of that fight. When we put down the idea of what our life should be, what we should be doing, what we ought to be doing, where we thought we would be, when we finally let go of that should, must, and ought, then we can wholeheartedly look at where we are and accept that. It's letting go of that. Acceptance doesn't mean that you like it. Acceptance doesn't mean that you approve of it. Acceptance doesn't mean that you're passive. Acceptance just means it is what it is. And now that I know that, acceptance is the pathway to being present, to being in the moment, to being mindful. We use the word mindful more and more, and mindfulness is really just about paying attention with purpose. Paying attention with purpose. How do you center yourself in your right now? We can get so, tell me that you're with me, because people, I'm doing the same thing as you. We can get so preoccupied with the perceived future, right? In the rehearsing the tragedy. And we can ruminate and rehash all of what's happened in the past, that we are squeezing out the present. We are just pushing the present. The present's getting smaller and smaller. And that is the only time we have to look someone in the eye and be in love. And that is the only time we have to talk, to live, to breathe, to experience, to create. We only can do that in our present. So cancer has taken too much from you. Don't let it take away your present. Come back to this right now. Resilience. I believe each and every one of you is resilient. I know you are. Often in my office, people walk in and they're not feeling okay. They're not coping. They're not sure. And they say, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I say back to them, well, something's at work. Tell me how you've gotten here. Tell me how you've gotten here to Austin, Texas. Something's at work in you. And I want you to begin to think about, what are my personal traits of resilience, and own it and work it. In the same way you go into a dressing room when you try on a bathing suit and you find a suit that works your assets, works your strengths. I want you to walk through life and I want you to work your resilience. So what is your resilience? Are you funny? Are you detail-oriented and organized? Are you a problem solver? Are you resourceful? Are you flexible? Do you reach out and grab other people and bring them around you? If you're having a hard time figuring out what your resilience is, ask a close friend, ask your parent. I say that to people in my office. If your mom was sitting here with me, what would your mama tell me? Oh, Jane, she's always been my one who. If your best friend was in this room with me, what would they say? Oh yeah, Tanya, in our group of friends, Tanya is always the one that sees the situation like. Listen in, learn what your resilience is. Reframe your stress response, and what I mean by that is I'm talking about word choice. That people come in my office and they talk about things being brutal and they're miserable and it's tragic and it's terrifying. And I believe you. And I want to join you and better understand you. But I also want you to just think for a quick second what it might feel like if we used different words and how that might etch that differently in your soul. It's complicated. It's intense. Does that change it just a touch? Are there more truths? If you walk through this life looking for all of the things that are wrong with you, you're going to find them. If you walk through this life looking for all the things that are out there to hurt you or that are unsafe, you're going to come up with a lot of evidence. I don't want to minimize that, and I don't want to dismiss that because I know those fears and those worries are real, but I want you to turn the light on to the rest of the room. There are more truths. More truths. Let's look and see. Are there more truths in this situation? Maybe. Take that stress response when we're learning to figure out what it is, and can you make your immediate response to stress to slow down? I don't know if it surprises you at all, but I got a lot of energy. And often when I get stressed, my tendency is to work harder and to move faster. And so my work always in coping is to remember, Julie Larson, slow down. Can you do the same? Bookmark it. This is the researcher in me. The researcher in me wants you to circle the dates on the calendar that feel really hard. And say, you know, on this day I was feeling this and I was thinking this and it felt like a level 9. And then revisit that in a week, and in a month, in 6 months, in a year. Think about how you felt in October of 2018. Do you feel different today? Think about a year from now, how you might feel. I'm going to end you with this quote. And I think it's pretty powerful, and I like the words. In times of pain, when the future is too terrifying to contemplate, and the past is too painful to remember, I have learned to pay attention to right now. The precise moment I was in was always the only safe place for me. Each moment taken alone was always bearable. In the exact right now, we are all, always, all right. Thank you.